knowledge about Bethlehem was from the Bible, and my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ was born here. And of course, a lot of people, they want to come here to visit and see places. But for me, it was a surprise and shock to see how hard and how difficult is the situation.
I remember being on the bus and hearing the guy kept talking about the wall. What wall is he talking about? So I came into this situation having absolutely no idea that there was any sort of conflict or that Palestine even existed.
I was actually born in the States. My father's Palestinian and my mother's American, but I was raised here in Bethlehem. I had quite a few bad experiences talking with Christians in the US. I was kicked out of 2 churches, technically asked to leave another 2, accused of being a Muslim spy, accused of being a terrorist, that we're all Muslim, that we all condone violence, that we hate the West and the US. So those are some of the greatest misconceptions, I would say.
These are some of the items that we found in the street that the soldiers from the tower throw at us. You can see the gas canisters, the rubber-coated bullets, hand-stunned grenades, live ammunition.
I can remember very clearly standing in the Garden of Gethsemane and just crying. How can this be the Holy Land? How can this be the place of peace? Because that's not what I realize the people who are living here are experiencing. It's sad. There are these great big red signs. They always put them on both sides of the road. They're in Hebrew, Arabic, and English, and it says, danger. You are entering into Area A. Strictly forbidden for Israeli citizens to enter Area A. It could be dangerous and you may even die. You come into Bethlehem and if you don't know anything about it, you read these signs and you think, who is it that lives inside this place? Ugh. Millions of people come to this place every year. Millions of Christians come and they don't experience what the Palestinians experience, and they don't experience what I experienced. Going through checkpoints and being stopped and being questioned because of your religion. And how in the world do you expect me to go back to the US and live my normal life after seeing this? The wall is a huge separation barrier that exists between Israel and the West Bank. Israel started constructing it in 2002 with the idea that this would be a security fence or a security wall that would prevent further uprisings of the Palestinians. If you're an Israeli, you talk about the West Bank. This is the area of Judea and Samaria that is under the control of the Palestinian Authority. But if you're a Palestinian, you don't use the term West Bank because you use the term Palestine because this land to them has been Palestine forever. After the first uprising of the Palestinians, there were what we call the Oslo Accords, and that was like they wanted to come up with a way that the Palestinians could have control over some of their land. So what they did is they divided it into 3 different areas. They call them areas A, Area B, and Area C. city centers like Bethlehem and Ramallah and Jericho are considered Area A, and they're under control of the Palestinian Authority. As you get further out from the cities, you move into what they call Area B, where it's like the Palestinian Authority has some control over picking up garbage and this sort of thing, but they don't have any real authority over what happens in Area B. And then even further out from Area B into the more rural areas is Area C. Now, this land is supposed to belong to the Palestinians, but the Palestinian Authority has basically no control over it whatsoever.
This piece of land was bought by my grandfather in 1916, where Palestinians used to buy land without registration. The family worked here, lived satisfied, happy, farming and planting different kinds of trees until 1991, where Israel government declared this piece of land as a state land. But this is a private property, it's not a state land. 27 years struggling in front of the Israeli court. They kept postponing the case to find an excuse to confiscate the land. You know, as Palestinians, we live here under Israeli military laws. They say if you do not use your land 3 years, it is automatically considered as a state land. The idea of kept postponing to keep us under stress, to push us to leave or to push us to violence. So we saw ourselves in front of two options, whether to continue struggle or to leave. But we say we are not leaving and we are not reacting. We want to continue our work, acting in a positive way.
It's difficult because this is supposed to be Palestine, and this was land that is inside the Green Line that had been given to them, yet they can't get in any Area C. No Palestinians can build buildings. If they live in Area C, they can't redo their bathroom. They're not allowed to make any updates or any changes to their homes because they live in what's known as Area C.
When we talk to many Christian leaders and normal Christians, pilgrims who come to this land, we realize that, as I usually say, by default, they have already a perspective, a worldview about this land, about the situation, and in particular about the conflict. They have a certain way in which they look to the Israeli and a certain way in which they look to the Palestinian. They come with a certain assumption about who's good and who's bad, without really not just any knowledge about the situation, and also with a theology that, whether they know it or not, intentionally or not intentionally, favors one people over the other, and many times a theology that is harmful to us Palestinians. For example, the fact that this is a Jewish land, that God gave this land to the Jewish people as an eternal possession, and all of a sudden we say, but wait a minute, we happen to be living here. Are we against God's will? Where is justice in all of that?
Sometimes the media doesn't play the fair role, and they don't know from the news what they will expect to see here or experience. But my advice to everyone willing to come as a pilgrim or visitor to the land, open your heart so you can see and you can listen to the Lord's voice to you.
I was meeting with a friend yesterday, a friend of a friend, and a friend of mine encouraged this seminary student to do his best while in the land to meet me. And he was part of a prominent Christian evangelical seminary students who are here for 3 weeks. And he came alone to Bethlehem to meet me. And I said, so where's the rest of the group? He said, well, I had to leave. They are in a pottery class in somewhere in Jerusalem. And I thought, so what's more interesting and beneficial for seminarians, future leaders, to meet Palestinian Christians who have been living here, witnessing here, to listen about how we deal with occupation, how we try to build bridges with Muslims and Jews, how we live as a small minority here, yet part of the community, or listening about excavations, about things that happened 2,000 years ago. And he was speechless. He said, this is what we're here for. And probably we're going to come to Bethlehem for 2 hours to visit the Nativity Church, in and out and leave. Is this the right way to do it? And I'm talking about seminarians here, not just typical church groups. We somehow ignore suffering. We become impassionate about issues for the sake of doing a religious duty.
Every Jew, like any Jew, if they see an Arab walking beside them in the mall or anything and they spoke in Arabic, they think we're gonna just have a bomb or something. And I think it's scary for them being near us. They think we're gonna stab one of them or something, and we think that they're gonna do the same thing to us. So it's scary being around them.
They can't leave this place freely. They don't have the freedom of movement. They don't go on dates to the movies because there aren't movies here.
We're kind of present because we can barely go out of Palestine, and it's only in Palestine.
Sometimes you see things walking to work in the morning, and you see them holding a young boy going to school, asking him for identifications, and he's just a young boy. It's so hard for us to see this.
It's very difficult for children to reach us, and it is because of the separation barrier. It's because of the checkpoints. It's not easy. It's sometimes very difficult to get permits. Sometimes some mothers, they don't get the permit, so another member of the family joins the child. It's a big challenge.
Sometimes they'll ask me where I'm from, and I tell them America, and they just let me go on through. They don't really care. But there was one evening I was coming back in, and the soldier must have been really young, I don't know, 17, 18 years old. And he asked me where I was from, and I told him America like I always do. And he said, "Do you know you're going into Bethlehem?" Like, uh-huh. He said, "Do you want to go into Bethlehem?" Like, yeah, I live there. And he couldn't believe it. And as I drove through, I thought to myself, I wonder if he's ever driven through that checkpoint, if he's ever like passed over the threshold of the wall to understand that the people who live inside there aren't monsters. They're not gonna eat anybody alive. They're normal people. Yeah.
Many times we encounter those who don't know anything about the situation. Many times they will tell us, am I in the West Bank or in Israel? So these questions will show that people are not aware of the context where they are visiting. Many times we tell them about the situation, what we are doing, why the wall is here. So they were bewildered, and many times we have even Germans who has an encounter with the German wall, and they say, we thought that there will be no wall after the Berlin Wall, and now we see that wall.
They spent more time in waiting on the lines or on the queue more than the time when they go to visit the stars where Jesus was born. Bethlehem is the place where Jesus was born. Bethlehem under the Palestinian Authority now. So if you want to consider Bethlehem as part of Israel, then you have to have a lesson in history.
You know, I have my own olive trees. In the past, when you don't have developed irrigation system, when you need to carry the water either on donkeys or with buckets and to move towards miles of miles, and to water it for the first 5 years, in such mountainous area. How much struggle, how much suffering, how much sacrifice you have raised this olive tree to nourish it with love, with agape, with passion, with compassion, and to have the resilience and the perseverance that you will eat from its fruits in the coming years, and the generations to come will do it also. And most of our orchards have been taken by settlements, by security, dividing the land, depriving us from our land, from our orchards, and this is very painful and a bleeding wound that has not been healed. And the tree, which goes back to 2,000 years when Jesus wept, in the Garden of Gethsemane. I believe Jesus is still weeping on the trees uprooted.
I know there is a lot of talk about, Middle East, this issue of maybe disagreement between Muslims and Christians, but it doesn't exist here.
One thing that we find to be more evident and clear every year is that nonviolence is more of a threat to the Israeli occupation than violence itself. And my oppressor, my occupier, the Israeli occupation also deserves security, they deserve peace, but not at the expense of the Palestinian livelihood and lives. And so the only means to achieving and realizing sovereignty, to achieving a state of stability in which I feel that my rights as a Palestinian are guaranteed and respected is through the use of nonviolence.
We try to solve everything with peace and love, and in the Bible it says love your enemy, and we have to. It's hard to do it with the occupation here. It's hard to just love our enemy, especially for the families that have lost their loved ones in the war, or they're in prison now. It's hard for them.
I look at Christians here and I see that they've found a way to hold on to hope, even though it seems far off, even though it seems unreachable or unmanageable. I mean, they're still living, they're still dreaming, they're still thinking about a future. And that's inspiring to me.
Hand in hand, we should pray for peace and love for the world.
If we can act as Christians as a bridge way of reconciliation and in creating some sort of stability and peace among people, then we should do that, and we are doing that.
The Christians here are the living stones of the country. As people, Christians, we always pray for peace because we want peace, not only for our generation, but for our children.
Jesus was a people person. He met people. He listened to stories. He cared. And oftentimes when I see these buses coming, they pass the checkpoint, they pass the separation wall, the refugee camps. And I usually wonder, do they care? If you really want to have an authentic experience in the Holy Land, there's nothing more than meeting with sisters and brothers and celebrating our unity, the spirit that unites us.
If you see someone that they are in need and you won't help them, you are not Christians. And that's why we are calling our sisters and brothers. If you want to come and visit the dead stones, don't come. If you need to come and hear the living stones, which we are the living stones as a Christian present in this land. We are calling the international to come and see.